Hi, this is Rabbi David Jaffe here with Yehudah Webster, and we are talking about anti-racism Mussar curriculum that we're going to be working on and trying to bring out into the world. And it's great to be here with Yehudah. Yehudah is organizer with Jews for Racial Economic Justice and part of our Ovdim Fellowship. And it's been wonderful just building a relationship this year, Yehudah, with you and doing this work and learning together. So Yehudah, for people who don't know you, can you tell us a little about yourself and your anti-racism work?
Sure. My name is Yehudah. I'm a community organizer with Jews for Racial and Economic Justice. And briefly, I'll say that I found my voice in political education around anti-racism after I went through Jay Fredge's political organizing fellowship. And it was also in the convergence of the Black Lives Matter uprising in 2014, 2015. Mm-hmm. And so there were a lot of folks that I knew personally, that I was connected to peripherally, professionally, that in the white Jewish community were trying to make sense of their role in the movement and what they could be doing to address racism, not just in America, but also within white Jewish spaces. And so I started to, along with some other more experienced and skilled facilitators, do this work of political education around anti-Black racism and anti-Semitism, given that these two oppressions really hold hands and work to divide our communities at large. And so started to delve into that work of planting seeds for folks and trying to agitate and move folks little by little with these workshops. An hour here, 3 hours there. And I then got the opportunity to work with Repair and work with the fellows here in New York over the course of a year. And so that was unique because most of the time when I'm working with folks, it's only those 3 hours and then it's, see you never. So it was great to be able to have that sustained work with the Repair fellows. And that's where I got to start to play with building out a little bit of my own curriculum around anti-racism, given some of the different tools that I had picked up and frameworks that really had worked for me in my experience in making sense of all of this. And I really wanted to bring in a spiritual lens and see how folks could start to actually work on being anti-racist, not just in organizing, but every day in their life.
That's great. Just for folks who don't know, Repair the World National Jewish Service Organization with fellows here in New York and other cities around the country. That's great. Yehudah, can you tell us about Mussar specifically? Mussar, the School of Jewish Ethical Applied Ethics and spiritual practice in general, how those could be useful in dismantling racism?
So, I'd say that while a lot of so much of racism is institutional and structural. And of course, we need to challenge those power structures and change them entirely and alter those relations to power. In addition to that, I started to realize that if we don't have personal and communal transformation, those structures themselves will never actually shift. And even if they do, as we've seen, certain legislation and checks and balances have been put in place in this country, people continue to be racist. And the culture continues to persist in such a way that the destruction of Black and brown bodies is as it was for the last several decades and centuries. And so I started to really challenge then what is at the core issue of racism And what I found for me is what's at the core is our orientation to care. And our orientation to care is very hierarchical. And because of that, if Black people remain at the bottom forever, I don't care, what you feel intellectually or even in your heart. When push comes to shove, you're going to continue to choose policies and behave in such a way that you'll only care for the folks at the top of your hierarchy of care and will ignore the folks at the bottom. And so what I'm looking to Mussar for is to help me in reorienting my orientation to care so that it's not hierarchical. And so that it is inclusive of not just myself and others, but also can be inclusive of my opponents. And I think that Mussar gives us a pathway of the character traits needed to be able to apply care for self, others, and opponents. Not in a way that's just of butterflies and nice feelings, but the concrete acts of care that also include rebuke, that also include some of the hard aspects of care.
Yeah, I've certainly been influenced by your thinking around this over the past months as we've talked about it, and this idea of care being at the root and core. Thinking about generosity, and thinking about how just Black and brown people get treated by many white people with like no generosity, with like the worst possible interpretation you could put on something. And I see that as like that kind of shift. That's the kind of shift that Mussar can do for people because we're trying to develop an ability to care and to give and not just feel something, but actually act and do something based on care. That's not that pushes us beyond what we're used to doing. So I hear that in what you're saying.
And what I'll say in addition to that, and to just bring it full circle, is that it's through these concrete acts of care, as a white person or even as a Black person, for other Black people. You love who you care for, right?
Yeah, right.
And it's the concrete acts of care that will start to actually undo the racist psyche that's been embedded, not just consciously, but also unconsciously. And so Mussar is a really important praxis in being able to cultivate those concrete acts of care into your daily life.
No, right on. That that's what you just said is a very core Mussar idea. Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler expresses that in his book, in his essay, Discourse on Loving Kindness, that it's not that you care for the one you love, it's that you love the one you care for, as you just said. And it's the care creates that love there. At least, it can do that. Also, there's a beautiful idea from I learned recently from Rabbi Shimon Shkup, who is not himself a Mussar teacher particularly, was very Mussar influenced. And Rabbi Micha Berger writes about this in his book Widen Your Tent, that Rabbi Shkup writes about the 4 levels of the I, the I being me, I, the ego. And he says you have your basic kind of, mammalian I of like, I gotta just take care of my bodily needs and that kind of level. And then you have spirituality in a sense of, there's God and I'm in a relationship with God and I'm gonna take care of my spiritual life, but still pretty small as far as what you're caring about. But then there's this 3rd level that's you bring into your sense of I and who you are, my family, my community, and like that level out. And then there's a 4th level where you bring into your sense of who you are the people who are like at that next level out, and even on Earth, and the people. And so when I hear you talking about care and widening your circle, or who's getting care from you, I hear that as a whole practice to understand that really we're not separate. But you don't get there by thinking about it. You get there by actually doing acts of care, which what Mussar is all about. Yeah. Yehudah, anything additional you want to say about why the need now for a particular anti-racism Mussar curriculum, in addition to anything you've just said?
I'd say that I've been doing this work formally for 6 years.
The anti-racism or the organizing, or both?
Organizing and formally anti-racism work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd say I'm still relatively green, and still yet I can tell that many times we're in a constant loop in many of our arenas and areas of organizing. And the progress we feel like we're making is a mere illusion. And the racism just shifts its structure, right? It went from the Jim Crow era to what Michelle Alexander called the new Jim Crow, right?
Yeah.
The carceral system. So for me, what's going to be different? That's my question. And a deep acknowledgement and approach of the spiritual with the concrete, I think, is what's been missing, or an element of what's been missing in the movement. And the prioritizing of the personal and communal transformation along with the structural is also key to moving from the letter of the law to also embodying that change.
Right. Great. It does seem like there is this something happening out in the world as far as the integration of the spiritual life and the political life and the organizing life. And it seems like seeing that in a lot of different places now. And God willing, that can make the move things in ways that I haven't been able to move. So last question I had was, what are other ways that having a regular spiritual practice, which I know you do, so having regular spiritual practice has impacted your life in general and your organizing in particular?
I think I was sharing this with you a few weeks ago. I always used to think that if I ate well and slept for a good amount of time every night and worked out in the mornings, that my spiritual practice would come together and I'd be able to meditate and have a prayer practice and, really elevate it in that way. And as I've been doing Mussar and over the summer with 40 Days of Teshuvah, where I was publicly held accountable to daily practice, I've been realizing it's the complete opposite, that it's the habitual spiritual practice that brings everything else into alignment. And seemingly less effort than the other orientation that I was moving with. And so I saw myself eating much better. I was working out daily as I was aspiring to. And sleep wasn't an issue at all. I even was able to cut back on TV, which has been something that the Netflix has been getting me, So it's humbling to engage in spiritual practice. I'm constantly learning and constantly being challenged to grow and to be better than I was the day before.
Mm.
So.
Wow, it's a great testimonial for doing the work. And as we know, anyone who's tried to do spiritual practice, it's getting it going and really on discipline is hard. But it's like what they say in 12-step. It works if you work it, so it works.
There you go.
That's
Yeah.
that's really with our spiritual practices as well, whatever
Yes.
they are.
I mean,
Um,
I
that's
mean,
great. So Yehudah, thanks a lot. I'm really excited to get working on this curriculum together with you and others. People I've talked about are excited to help out in other ways as well. And so if you're listening to this or seeing this, keep an eye out. I will be coming out with an anti-racism Mussar curriculum, God willing, sometime towards the end of this calendar year, beginning of next calendar year, and then God willing, will be a contribution to the important work that needs to happen in this world. Thanks a lot,
okay,
Yehudah.
Hashem. Thanks, Rabbi.
נתיבות שלי